Trump announces Golden Dome missile defense system. 93 UN aid trucks enter Gaza. Good afternoon and salam Malaysia Madani. I'm Brendan Lepal. US President Donald Trump unveiled new details on Tuesday on his plan for a Golden Dome missile shield system to protect the country against attacks, saying it should be operational in about 3 years. The president announced $25 billion in initial funding for the plan, which he said could eventually cost a total of some $175 billion. He said US Space Force General Michael Goodline will lead the effort and that Canada has expressed interest in being part of it as, quote, they want to have protection also. While Trump put the total price at $175 billion, the Congressional Budget Office has estimated the cost of space-based interceptors to defeat a limited number of intercontinental ballistic missiles at between $161 billion and $542 billion over 20 years. Golden Dome has more expensive goals, with Trump saying it will deploy next-generation technologies across the land, sea and space, including space-based sensors and interceptors. Just days after returning to the White House in January, Trump unveiled his intentions for the system, aimed at countering next-generation aerial threats to the U.S., including ballistic and cruise missiles. The Trump Organization is seeking to build a new luxury tower in Vietnam's Ho Chi Minh City, according to officials who met with representatives of the company and its local partner, Kinh Bach City Development Corporation. Vietnamese authorities say 2 potential sites have already been surveyed, with more meetings scheduled this week. The president's son, Eric Trump, and the organization's executive vice president is expected to lead the visit and scout locations. Local media reports Eric Trump will also attend the groundbreaking of a separate $1.5 billion luxury golf resort near Hanoi. The 990-hectare project will include a 54-hole golf course and villas and is slated for completion by March 2027, ahead of Vietnam's hosting of the APEC summit. The Trump Organization has faced criticism in the past over potential conflicts of interest between Trump's political role and his business dealings abroad. Trump last visited Vietnam in 2019 for a summit with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, calling Hanoi an incredible city and praising the country's economic growth. The United Kingdom issued its strongest condemnation yet of Israeli attacks on Gaza and the West Bank, calling the Gaza crisis abominable and pausing free trade talks with Israel. Speaking in the House of Commons, Foreign Secretary David Lammy described Israel's ongoing military campaign as dangerous, repellent, and monstrous. He warned that Israel's stated policy of allowing only just enough to prevent hunger into Gaza amounted to a deliberate starvation strategy.
Therefore, today, I'm announcing that we have suspended negotiations with this Israeli government on a new free trade agreement. We will be reviewing cooperation with them under the 2030 bilateral roadmap. The Netanyahu's government's actions have made this necessary. Madam Deputy Speaker, today, my honourable friend, the Minister for the Middle East, is summoning the Israeli ambassador to the Foreign Office to convey this message.
Lammy also announced new sanctions on 3 Israeli settlers, along with 2 groups accused of inciting violence against Palestinians. The sanctions include financial restrictions and travel bans. They come in response to what he called a, quote, dramatic surge in settler attacks, over 1,800 since January, according to UN figures. In Southeast Asia, Singapore is calling for an immediate humanitarian ceasefire in Gaza and the urgent resumption of aid to Palestinian civilians as Israeli attacks in the region intensify. In a statement, Singapore's Ministry of Foreign Affairs urged all parties to comply with international law and protect civilians, especially medical workers and facilities. The ministry said all remaining hostages held by Hamas should be released immediately, stressing that civilian infrastructure must be safeguarded. Singapore also warned against unilateral actions that could block the path to peace and firmly rejected the idea of the permanent displacement of Palestinian civilians. Reiterating its long-lasting position, Singapore backed a two-state solution in line with UN Security Council resolutions, calling it the only viable path toward a just and lasting peace. The statement comes as UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres expressed alarm over the rising death toll in Gaza, with hundreds of civilians reported killed in recent airstrikes and ground operations. Israel said 93 United Nations UN aid trucks entered war-ravaged Gaza on Tuesday, a day after the UN announced it had been cleared to send supplies for the first time since Israel imposed a total blockade on 2nd of March. A total of 93 United Nations trucks carrying humanitarian aid, including flour for bakeries, infant food, medical equipment, and pharmaceuticals, entered Gaza via the Kerem Shalom crossing. The announcement came amid international outcry over the dire humanitarian situation in the Palestinian territory, and as European countries ramped up pressure on Israel to abandon an intensified campaign and let more aid in. The UN had received permission to send around 100 trucks of aid into Gaza after 9 were authorized the day before. However, the spokesman for UN Chief Antonio Guterres said that a few dozen aid trucks were allowed in, but he emphasized of difficulties receiving deliveries into Gaza. And on a related note, the United Nations has received permission from Israel for about 100 more emergency aid trucks to enter Gaza, though the first supplies to have entered in weeks remain under Israeli control, a spokesperson said on Tuesday.
We have requested and received approval of more trucks to enter today. Many more than were approved yesterday. And we expect, of course, with that approval, many of them, hopefully all of them, to cross today to a point where they can be picked up and get further into the Gaza Strip for distribution.
After an 11-week Israeli blockade, Israel cleared 9 trucks of aid on 19 May to enter Gaza through the Kerem Shalom crossing, although Lurk said just 5 of those entered Gaza. Malnutrition rates in Gaza have risen during the Israeli blockade and could rise exponentially if food shortages continue.
I have data from until the end of April, because May data we don't have yet. It shows malnutrition is on the rise. It went down when the ceasefire happens. It went down, but now it's on the rise. And then the worry is that if the current food shortage continues, it's exponentially increase, and then beyond our control. It's unthinkable that 10% of kids are malnourished. It's unthinkable that we have severe malnourished children in Gaza, where they used to enjoy the life, and there's no life in Gaza. That's what our staff says so, and this will affect our operations.
Sudan said the United Arab Emirates UAE was responsible for an attack on Port Sudan this month, accusing the Gulf state for the first time of direct military intervention in a war between the Sudanese army and the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces. The UAE denied the allegations in a statement and said it condemned the attack. Speaking in New York recently, Sudanese ambassador to the United Nations Al-Harith Idris Al-Harith Mohammed alleged that the 4th of May strike on the army's wartime capital Port Sudan was carried out by MQ-9 or MQ-9B warplanes and kamikaze drones launched from an Emirati base on the Red Sea with the aid of Emirati ships.
In May 4, several OPS ground agents or group agents reported GPS jamming events resulting in the drone showing its position. Several hotspots were identified, including over the Red Sea. So in May 4 as well, at least 8 cruise missiles or drones were launched from over the Red Sea, reportedly launched from a UAE military base targeting Sudan. The Red Sea international water and air base has been used for at least 5 hours of concessions to attack Port Sudan airport. So the drone attack on Port Sudan airport and other cities was intended to disrupt and isolate Sudan during these telling times.
Mohammed alleged that the strike on Port Sudan was revenge for an army attack a day earlier on an alleged Emirati warplane in the RSF-controlled city of Nyala, which he said had killed 13 foreigners, including Emirati citizens. And yet come Honda to scale back on electric vehicles, focus on hybrid cars. Stay tuned. But before that, China has expressed strong support for the upcoming ASEAN GCC China Summit. Now, this underscores the importance of enhanced cooperation among Southeast Asia, the oil-rich Gulf Cooperation Council countries, and China to strengthen trade, regional connectivity, and economic integration amid global challenges. Deputy Director General of the Department of Asian Affairs, Ministry of Foreign Affairs of China, Liang Jiangjun, said Beijing views the trilateral summit as a timely platform to consolidate ties between ASEAN, GCC, and China, particularly in areas ranging from infrastructure to digital innovation, food security, energy, and supply chain resilience. Liang noted that there remains vast untapped potential for cooperation in the fields of energy and agriculture in ASEAN. He pointed out that Malaysia, in particular, holds significant potential as a regional logistics and production hub due to its strategic location and robust infrastructure development, citing the East Coast Rail Link (ECRL) as an example. China and Malaysia will soon launch a cultural dialogue mechanism focused on Islamic culture and regional heritage. The ASEAN GCC China Summit will be held in Kuala Lumpur on 27th of May. Major U.S. stock indexes slipped Tuesday as investors' concerns grew over rising fiscal risks and ongoing debates in Congress over a sweeping tax cut bill. The S&P 500 snapped a 6-day winning streak, closing down 23 points. The Dow fell 115 points, and the Nasdaq lost 73. Markets are reacting to a Republican-backed proposal to extend the 2017 tax cuts from President Trump's first term. Trump urged his party to unite behind the bill, but key holdouts remain. Investors are worried the measure could accelerate the U.S. budget deficit. Those concerns deepen after Moody's downgraded the U.S. credit rating on Friday, citing rising debt levels. Longer-term Treasury yields moved slightly higher, reflecting growing investor caution. Meanwhile, the dollar weakened again, falling to a 2-week low against the yen. This comes as Federal Reserve officials adopt a more cautious tone on the economy. St. Louis Fed President Alberto Musalem warned that while U.S.-China trade tensions have eased, the labor market may soften and inflation could still rise. Investors are also reassessing recent market gains and watching for further developments in U.S. trade and tax policy. Honda Motors said on Tuesday that it was scaling back its investment in electric vehicles given slowing demand and would be focusing on capturing growing demand for hybrids with new models. Its CEO, Toshihiro Mibe, told the news conference that automaker has lowered its planned investment in electrification and software through the 2030 business year to $48.4 billion from $69.2 billion previously.
まず EV においては足元の市場減速を踏まえると、2030年時点での EV の販売比率の見通しは、これまで目標としてきた 30% から下回る想定です。今後もそのニーズにサステナブルに応えていくためには、2020年代後半の商品投入を目指し、パワフルな走行性能、牽引性能に環境性能を兼ね備える大型車向けのハイブリッドシステムを開発します。
Honda said it expects to sell 2.2 million to 2.3 million hybrid vehicles by 2030. It plans to launch 13 next-generation hybrid models globally in 4 years from 2027. Earlier this month, Honda announced it had put on hold for about 2 years a $10.7 billion plan to build an EV production base in Ontario, Canada, due to slowing demand for electric cars. And in other news, residents of India's Bengaluru were wading through knee-high floodwater on Tuesday as deaths related to the floods rose to 3. The local municipal corporation commissioner in Bengaluru said the downstream canal lacks sufficient carrying capacity and directed his team to identify a solution to prevent further clogging.
At Silk Board, what we see is that the moment the carrying capacity of the downstream canal is not enough. I will ask my team to see what is the best solution beyond this, because with this kind of rain, there is always going to be clogging. Of course, internally there are some issues of taking water, clogged drains, etc., which we will resolve.
According to the India Meteorological Department, moderate to heavy rainfall is expected to persist until Thursday. Meanwhile, in the northeastern city of Guwahati, heavy rainfall left several streets submerged, forcing residents to wade through flooded roads. India, with 1.4 billion people, relies on rainfall to support its population, many of whom live off and rely on farming. However, excessive rainfall can cause floods, especially due to poor drainage systems. Hundreds of ride-hailing drivers staged protests on Tuesday in several cities in Indonesia to demand higher pay and reject a planned merger between the country's largest tech company Goto and US-listed ride-hailing firm Grab. In Jakarta, the protest was centered near the President's office, parliamentary buildings and the office of the Transportation Ministry, where hundreds of drivers gathered wearing their trademark green jackets and helmets. The strike comes at a delicate time for the Southeast Asian internet leaders, as Singapore-based Grab has been negotiating to buy its Indonesian rival for more than $7 billion. Drivers in Indonesia, a country of more than 275 million people, are protesting what they describe as exploitative app policies and regulatory negligence. The protest involves drivers from multiple platforms including Goto, Grab, Maxim, InDrive, Lalamove and Seal Limited's Shopee. Ride-hailing services, especially motorcycle taxis, are a critical part of the transport landscape in Southeast Asia's largest economy, especially in big cities. Goto's unique Gojek, with more than 3.1 million motorcycle drivers, and Grab have dominated Indonesian markets for years. Alphabet's Google said it would put artificial intelligence into the hands of more web surfers in its latest effort to fend off growing competition from startups like OpenAI. CEO Sundar Pichai stated that Alphabet would build such AI with the cause in mind as well. In recent months, Google has become more aggressive in keeping up with competitors after appearing flat-footed upon the release of Microsoft-backed OpenAI's ChatGPT in 2022.
For those who want an end-to-end AI search experience, we are introducing an all-new AI mode. It's a total reimagining of search. With more advanced reasoning, you can ask AI mode longer and more complex queries like this. In fact, users have been asking much longer queries, 2 to 3 times the length of traditional searches. And you can go further with follow-up questions. All of this is available today as a new tab right in Search.
You can get superpowers when you...
Google unveiled the plans amid a flurry of demos that included new smart glasses during its annual I/O conference in Mountain View, California. Google's AI assistant Gemini app now has more than 400 million monthly active users. Talking about AI, a new global study by the International Labour Organization and Poland's National Research Institute reveals that 1 in 4 jobs worldwide is potentially exposed to generative AI. Titled Generative AI and Jobs, the report is the most detailed look yet at how AI could reshape work. It analyzes nearly 30,000 tasks across countries using expert input and AI models to identify where the biggest changes might happen. The findings show that 25% of global jobs could be affected, rising to 34% in high-income countries. Clerical and administrative roles face the highest exposure, while cognitive jobs in media, software and finance are increasingly impacted. The study also finds a gender gap. In wealthy countries, nearly 10% of women's jobs are at high risk of automation, compared to just 3.5% for men. Still, full automation remains limited, with many tasks still require human judgment and oversight, meaning most jobs will likely evolve rather than disappear. Researchers stress the need for smart, inclusive policies and social dialogue to help workers adapt and ensure that AI boosts both productivity and job quality. Moving on to sports, Tottenham and Manchester United brace up ahead of Europa League final. Stay with us. Tottenham Hotspur will be seeking to end their trophy drought on Wednesday when they face Manchester United in the Europa League final in Bilbao. Their last European title came all the way back in 1984 when they beat Anderlecht to win the UEFA Cup on penalties. 41 years and countless managers later, Tottenham boss Ange Postecoglou faces a game that could well be his last with the club, win or lose, against United in northern Spain.
My future is short. Wouldn't be the first person who changes jobs, mate. We all change jobs. I'm sure you've had more than one job. My future's assured. I've got a beautiful family. I've got a great life. I'll keep on winning trophies till I finish, wherever that is. So don't worry about my future, mate. My future is not entwined with anything. Right? My future is assured, you know, provided, God willing, my health remains and my beautiful family is beside me and my friends. There's nothing wrong with my future, mate. Don't stress, mate.
I meant specifically.
Sleep easy at night. I'll be okay.
Tottenham have suffered their worst ever Premier League campaign with 21 defeats, sitting 17th in the table, but face a United side who sit just 1 spot above them. Meanwhile, their opponents, Manchester United, received a fitness boost on the eve of the Europa League final as Joshua Zirkzee, Diogo Dalot and Lenny Yoro all returned to training on Tuesday. Ruben Amorim's side are preparing to face Tottenham in an all-English Europa League showpiece in Bilbao on Wednesday. Zirkzee has been ruled out for the rest of the season after suffering a hamstring injury at Newcastle in April, but the Dutch striker could be available after missing United's last 8 games in all competitions. Portugal fullback Dalot has been absent for 6 matches due to a calf problem, while French defender Euro set out last Friday's 1-0 loss at Chelsea with a foot issue. While that trio were able to train with their teammates at Carrington on Tuesday, there was still no sign of Dutch centre-back Matthijs de Ligt, who has been sidelined with an undisclosed problem for the last 3 games. United faced Tottenham at the San Mamés Stadium, looking to salvage a wretched domestic campaign by winning the first trophy of Amorim's reign. The team would secure a lucrative place in next season's Champions League if they beat Tottenham. Still on football, just 5 days after clinching the Saudi Pro League title, Al Ittihad racked up another win on Tuesday when they beat Al Shabab 3-2 away in Riyadh, with 2 goals coming from Musa Diaby. Diaby's first goal for the visiting side came straight out of the gate with an incredible shot high into the goal within the first 30 seconds of the match. The Frenchmen doubled their lead in the 34th minute after he was set up by Steven Bergwijn and then fired into an empty goal. Al Shabab got on the scoreboard 3 minutes into the first half stoppage time with a nice effort by Yannick Carrasco, who paired up with Musab Al Juwair. Bergwijn made it 3-1 for Al Ittihad with a second half goal. Christian Guanca then scored for the home side, but a steady Al Ittihad stayed out of danger to close out the match 3-2. Al Ittihad will have their last Saudi Pro League match of the season against Damak on 26th of May, followed by the Saudi Kings Cup on 30th of May against Al Qadsiya. Let's move on to tennis. Number 2 seed Frances Tiafoe won his opening match at the Hamburg European Open on Tuesday, along with Felix Auger-Aliassime and Alejandro Davidovich Fokina. American Frances Tiafoe, the second seed, beat Chinese Yunqiao Bu 7-5-6-2 to advance to the second round of the Hamburg Open at Tennis Stadium on Tuesday. Tiafoe, ranked number 15, will play Spaniard Roberto Bautista Agut next. Meanwhile, Alejandro Davidovich Fokina continued his impressive season on Tuesday at the Bitpanda Hamburg Open, where he defeated Frenchman Gael Monfils 6-3, 6-3 to reach the second round at the ATP 500. The Spaniard is 15-8 against top 50 opponents this season and reached at least the quarterfinals in his 2 most recent ATP 500 events in Acapulco and Barcelona. In another action, Felix Auger-Aliassime had come from 5 consecutive defeats until Wednesday, when he defeated Daniel Altmaier in ATP Hamburg 2025 in 2 sets to secure his first clay court victory of 2025. The Canadian, ranked 30th in the world, defeated the German with a score of 6-3 and 6-3 in 1 hour and 20 minutes to set up a clash with Giovanni Mpetshi Pericard in the round of 16. And that wraps up our bulletin this afternoon. In our top story, Trump rolls out $175 billion Golden Dome missile defense project. Do join us again tonight, 8:30 p.m. on Soloran Berita RTM and TV1 for more. You can also stream us live on RTM Click's website and mobile application. Till then, I'm Brendan Lepol. From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. Goodbye and have a wonderful day. Take care.